we go. We're talking about 1.3, which is substitution. We have three different methods to talk about: graphing, substitution, and elimination. We've already talked about graphing. We just had the quiz over it. Now we're talking about substitution on Wednesday. We will talk about elimination. You can see the schedule over there. Friday we'll review, and then Tuesday of next week we'll have a test. Thursday will be early release. Okay, so there's the schedule up there. We're talking about substitution. Go ahead and copy down those four methods or steps. Steps is a better word. With substitution, you have four steps. Substitution is a better method than graphing. It is not as good as elimination.
Good dog. Come on, Trey. Are we gonna when we get in Math 3, are we gonna do all this again?
No. Ms. Henson and I are in communication, and the idea is that if I cover it, then she won't have to. Now, that's not to say that she won't say, you're supposed to already know this, let's move on and go to the next step. But the idea is that we're going to cover. Now, I am talking a little bit about what we're going to do when we come back from spring break, how much math we're going to do before we review for the EOCT. And we'll just kind of see how that goes. All right, here's your first problem. 3x plus 4y is equal to negative 4. And x plus 2y is equal to 2. Now notice I didn't stack them. A lot of the problems are stacked, x, y, and a number. I wrote them side by side like this for substitution, and actually that matters. When using this method of substituting crisscross, you want them side by side like that. First step is pick a variable. You have 4 different variables that you can solve for. Step number 2 is solve. So obviously we could solve. We could solve for this x. We'd have to move the 4y over and divide by 3. We could solve for this y. We'd have to move the 3x over and divide by 4. We could solve for this x, where all we'd have to do is subtract 2y. Or we could solve for this y, subtract, and divide. So out of these 4 variables, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is the easiest variable to solve for?
The second x.
This x here. Okay, that's the easiest variable by far to solve for. Now, if there was a 2 there, then it really wouldn't matter. You pick one, it doesn't matter. Okay? But as it is, x is far and away the easiest variable to solve for because it doesn't have a coefficient. There's no number in front of it, so it's a lot easier. So, step number 1, pick a variable. We did that. Step number 2, solve for that variable, meaning get it by itself. How do we get x by itself? We subtract 2y from both sides. So, x equals 2 minus 2y. And you can write that with the y in the front or y in the back. It really doesn't matter. Okay? Step number 1, pick a variable. Step number 2, solve for that variable. Step number 3, what method is this? Substitution, so we're going to substitute. Well, what are we going to substitute? Well, we solved, and we now know what x equals. X equals this stuff. So I can take that information and I can substitute it in to the other equation. That way, all I'll have are y's. I won't have 2 different variables. Okay? Very important to use parentheses. Okay? 3 times 2 minus 2y, parentheses, plus 4y is equal to negative 4. I have simply substituted in that x information in for x. Now, notice all I got is y's. Okay? I can solve that. Everybody in here should be able to solve that just like that. Most important thing here to remember to do is what? Distribute. Very good. Math word. We distribute the 3 there and there. We get 6 minus 3y. 6 minus 6y plus 4y is equal to negative 4. That's 6 minus 2y is equal to negative 4, or negative y, 2y, sorry, is equal to negative 6, negative 10, sorry. Slow down. Divide by negative 2 on both sides, and what is y equal? 5. Y equals 5. I'll say that again because I said it wrong. We distribute the 3 here and here. We get 6 minus 6y. Plus 4y is equal to negative 4. We combine our y's into negative 2y. I subtract 6 from both sides to give me negative 10. I divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5. Question?
So then once you plug that
Hold on. Cam?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Last step is
to plug,
crisscross. That's just my saying. What does that mean to do, Clay?
plug the y into the x.
We now know that y equals 5. How do we find x? We simply crisscross and plug it in back where I started. So x equals 2 minus 2 times 5. X equals negative 8. We have to write that as a coordinate. Okay? My coordinate where these two lines would cross would be at negative 8, 5. If I were to graph them at negative 8, way out here, and positive 5 somewhere, there's where the two lines would cross. If I were to graph them, remember all this goes together. I could graph these two. If I graphed them, they would cross at negative 8, 5. Okay? Questions? Any questions on your steps? Pick a variable, solve for that variable, which we did here. We took that variable and plugged it in on the other side. Solve for that side, crisscross. Take that information, plug it in here. Solve again. Okay? Is this easier than graphing?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Now, how many different answers can we get?
3.
3 different answers. This is only one type of answer. In doing this method, how do we come up with the other type of answer? And that's what I'm going to show you now. Okay? How could we come up with no solution? And how could we come up with infinitely many solutions?
So that was one solution.
That was one solution. If it's one solution, then that one solution is your coordinate. Okay? If you're doing your steps and you say 4x minus 2 times 2x plus 3 is equal to, say, 8, copy this down. Let's just say that you substituted in, you're right here on this step number 3. You distribute your negative 2 and you've got 4x minus 6 is equal to 8. What happens to your x's?
Where do you get the 8 from?
They go away.
This is, I'm doing like, where I'm halfway in a problem. If you substituted in and you did this and you had 4x minus 4x, what happens to them? They go away and I got negative 6 is equal to 8. Is that true or false?
That's false.
That's false. Negative 6 doesn't equal 8. If you're anytime you're doing a problem and your variables eliminate and what we end up with is a false statement, then what's your answer?
No solution.
No solution. Now, those two things go together. You get a false statement, you're going to have no solution. Graphically, to remind you, graphically, what would the two lines look like?
Parallel.
They would be parallel. Okay? They would be parallel. Multiple choice. It says solve by graphing. Could you use substitution? Sure you could. Okay? There's nothing wrong. They're not going to know what method you use. Okay? If it's multiple choice. If I'm doing this and my x's eliminate, and this was positive 8, right? Let's change this and make this, let's say, negative 4. Would that work out? So you get to this. My x's eliminate, and I get 8 equals 8, which is a true statement. My variable's eliminated, and I end up with a true statement. What do you think my answer is?
Oh.
Not all real numbers. That's
Infinitely.
infinitely many solutions. Write that down. If your variables eliminate, and what you're left with as a false statement, the answer is no solution. If your variables eliminate and what you're left with is a true statement, then your answer is infinitely many solutions.
On the quiz, if we didn't put the symbol, if we just put infinite amount of
If you wrote out the word, that's fine.
Okay.
I and F, that's fine too. As long as I can figure it out, that's fine. Let's try another one with substitution. Any questions before we do another exam? All right, let's try this one. Negative x plus 3y is equal to 1. and 4x plus 6y is equal to 8. You want to try it on your own? You want me to do it? Raise your hand for me to do it. Anybody want to see me do it one more? First step is what? I'll get you started. First step,
Figure out whatever you want to do.
pick a variable. 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D, however you want to think about it. Which is the easiest variable?
4x.
This one's a little easier. All I got to do is move that over and divide by -1.
Okay.
Now, if he picked 4x and did it correctly, would that be okay? Sure, you can do a different variable and still get it right. But for me, I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides and get -x equals 1 minus 3y. Then divide by -1 on both sides and say x equals 3y minus 1. Yes, it was another step. I had to divide by -1, but it's really not that big a deal. Okay? Now what do? What's step number 3 here? I've solved for a variable. I got x by itself. What do? Substitute. And it helps if you draw the arrows. Right? Circle this and draw that arrow. Where is it going? It's going right there. X equals. Where do I plug it in? I plug it in over here on this side. Okay? 4 parentheses 3y minus 1 parentheses plus 6y is equal to 8. Now you take it from there. Finish it out. I've given you a real good start. Finish it out. Sydney, you okay? Go to the bathroom? Go to the bathroom. Distribute here and here. 12y minus 4 plus 6y is equal to 8. That's 18y is equal to 12. Is that right? 18y is equal to 12. Divide by both sides by 18. And I get y equals what? 2 thirds. So what? We got a fraction. Okay? No big deal. Now what do I do with that 2 thirds? Plug it in where? Do I plug it in up here?
No.
I could, but that would be too much work. I've already got this one solved. All I've got to do is take the 2 thirds and crisscross and put it back in the other side. Right? The good news is there's a 3 there and they're going to cancel. X equals 3 times 2 thirds. The 3's cancel. Minus 1. What's 2 minus 1? 1. X equals 1. So I have one solution at 1 2 thirds. Question, could I do this problem graphing? Yes or no? Yes, I could. Would it be very difficult to do that problem graphing? Yeah, like next to impossible, unless you were using some kind of computer or graphing calculator. Okay? Questions? Anybody have any questions? All right. Stop this.